everyone, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens and learn about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that makes more sense to us and relates more to our daily lives and in our own language. For the past several weeks, several months at this point, we've been going through the Spirit's book together piece by piece. And this week, what we left off from last week to talk about, we left off on a section called Innate Ideas. So I looked up the definition of innate because we don't really use that word. So innate means to be natural or inborn. So you kind of like you're born with it. So innate ideas would be ideas that you're born with, that they're natural. So let's get right to it. Question 218. Does an incarnated spirit preserve any traces of the perceptions it had and the knowledge it acquired in its previous lives? So here the question's asking, so an incarnated spirit, so a spirit who is like on earth right now, like us, right now at this moment, do we preserve traces of perceptions we had or knowledge that we had from past lives and in general? And the spirits answered, a vague memory remains, given the incarnated spirit what you called innate ideas. So here what they're saying is that it's a vague memory. It's not like, oh, you remember exactly this happened, this, or you remember exactly how to do all this stuff when you're only 2 years old. It's not like that. You have a vague memory. So it's kind of in the back of your head, and then that's what gives you these innate ideas, these inborn, that you feel like these are natural ideas that you've had from the beginning, because it's probably something from from previous lives that is now just like in the back of your head, kind of a memory, but sometimes it comes out and we're like, wow, I knew that already. So it's just a little memory that we have of the past. And then there's a part B to this question, and it says, then the theory of innate ideas is not just a myth? So they're asking, so it's not fake, it's not just a myth? And the spirit said, no, because the knowledge acquired in each existence is not lost. When a spirit is free from matter, it always recalls such knowledge. While incarnate, it may forget it partially and temporary, but the intuition that helps it advance. Without it, it would always have to start over. Instead, with each new existence, the spirit starts from the point at which it finished in the preceding one. So what they're saying here is that this isn't just a myth. This is real, because if we don't lose all that we've learned already. So if we learned how to do something, if we conquered something, if we overcame a trial that we had to in our previous life, when we die, we don't have to start back at square one again. We retain that knowledge. But sometimes it's a lot easier for us to not remember that knowledge so that we can overcome more trials and more obstacles, and it'll be easier for us to do that if we don't remember every single thing. An example of this would be if someone killed your best friend in one life, and then so you have to come back with that person to work out this hatred that's in between you. So you have to come back with this person, and maybe you'll be brother and sister. You guys will be siblings. So now you guys are siblings, and if you remember what that person did, how are you ever going to learn to love that person? It's going to be so hard to learn to love that person when you know what they did in previous lives. So we forget important stuff like that so that we can try and overcome that trial, and it makes it a lot easier for us to overcome those obstacles. But we just forget it while we're incarnated on earth. When we go back to the spirit world, we'll have all the knowledge that we've acquired through all of our lives. So they say at the end here that with each new existence, the spirit starts at where it left off. So of course you're not gonna, if you died at age 60, you're not going to start off at age 60 in the next life, but you're going to come back and you're going to be the same spot. Maybe if you were halfway towards overcoming a trial, when you come back, you'll already be the first half will be super easy because you already overcame that part. And now it'll be the second half that you're working towards. So we start off where we left off on the last one. And then there was another question, a sub-question, and it said, then isn't there a very close connection between two successive existences? So they're saying, the question is, so isn't there a really close connection between this life that we're in right now and our past one, and the last past one that we had? And the spirits answered, not always as close as you might think, because the conditions of two lives are often very different. Also, the spirit may have progressed in the interval between them. So here what they're saying is that although if we're saying they picked up right after it, if you ended one life and then if one life, corporeal life, that ended, so you're going to start up the next one, is it going to be really close? And no, because maybe in one life you're very rich and you're living in that kind of status, and then you come back in a very poor scenario because that's another trial that you need to overcome. So obviously those two scenarios don't seem very similar, and you're going to learn different things in those. And also, while you're in the spirit world, some progress can be made in that interval. So maybe you made progress, so they're not directly really close together, the two existences. Question 219. What is the origin of the extraordinary abilities of those individuals who, without any previous learnings, seem to have an intuition about certain areas of knowledge, such as language, mathematics, etc.? So here the question is saying, so what about those people who they just are so good at something, like without even trying, like they barely learned it and they're amazing at it? So they're saying like languages, people who know so many languages and they didn't even have to try hard to really learn them. Or if you excel in mathematics, or sometimes we see those little kids who play the piano so incredibly without even touching a piano once. So they're saying, what about these instances? And the spirits answered, a memory of the past and the soul's previous progress, of which it now has no awareness. What else could the abilities come from? Bodies change, but the spirit does not. It merely changes its garment. So what they're saying here is that it's a memory of the past. If like those kids, those children prodigies who play the piano fabulously, it's because they're remembering something from their past, especially when they're really young. And also those people who speak lots of languages. Maybe it's because in their past life they spoke a few languages and now they're speaking a different few languages, and now all these languages are adding up and they have these little memories. It's like in the back of your head, in your conscious, but it's like coming out a little bit. And they're also saying, so the body changes, but the spirit doesn't. So the spirit learned how to play the piano, not just the physical body. The spirit learned how to play it. So the spirit, it's just like changing clothes. It had one clothes on, one body on, and now it's on to another one, but it still has that knowledge. Question 220. In changing bodies, can spirits lose certain intellectual faculties? For example, could they cease to have a taste for the arts? And the spirits answered, yes, if they dishonored that faculty or made a bad use of it. Moreover, the faculty remains dormant through an entire existence because the spirit wishes to exercise an unrelated one. In that case, it remains latent, but reappears later. So they're saying, so if the spirit is changing bodies or changing clothes, can it lose some things? Can it just be like, oh, you know what, I really liked playing the piano before, but not anymore. I don't want to focus on the piano. I want to focus on something else, maybe a different instrument, maybe a different topic altogether. So maybe because they made a bad use of it or they dishonored it, so maybe they had the opportunity to go to the best piano school ever and their parents could afford it, but they didn't practice, they didn't care, they didn't want it. So now kind of for us to learn about, to understand, to take opportunities while we have them, they won't have this opportunity to take the piano. So that might happen, to learn how to play the piano, and that's just the example we're using right now. It could be anything. So maybe they just made a bad use of it, so now in this life, they're not going to get that privilege to do that. And also, it could be that the spirit was like, okay, I'm going to give piano a break. Let me go to violin. But then, if they still haven't mastered piano, eventually they're going to have to go back and finish learning and mastering piano. And I just use examples of instruments because that's more relatable and understandable to us. But this could be anything. This could be a money issue. This could be if you have too much money, but you made bad use of it, so now you're going to come with little money. And there's millions and millions of examples we could use. Question 221. Are the instinctive sentiments of the existence of God and the presentiment of the future life due to a retrospect memory that humans have even in the primitive state? The spirits answered, they are a memory they have retained of what they knew as spirits before incarnating, but pride still stifles this sentiment. So the question here is asking that these instinctive sentiments, especially about the existence of God, so these things that even from in primitives, they just have this feeling that there's something more. Like even we see in ancient Egyptians that they had this feeling that there was something more. They had gods, they were getting there, they had the idea. Or these concepts that we have about the future, maybe back then when they were kind of thinking, okay, reincarnation, or they mummified because, okay, they were a little off. They thought we had to preserve the same body, but they were getting there. They had that instinctive idea. So what can we explain about this? Why do we have these instinctives? And they said that they are memory that we've obtained from what we knew in other lives. So, but our pride still can get in the way. So we can think, so like some people, they have this instinctive, like maybe they were very religious in a past life, but now they let their pride get the best of them. So now they're thinking that they're creating their own religion, or they're saying some stuff that's incorrect because they're too full of pride, or they're not even thinking of their conscience. They're just kind of pushing it aside. But these are just memories that they've retained from previous lives, and that's why it's so instinctive, that there's something there. And then there's a part 2 to this question, and it says, is it the same memory to which we are owed certain beliefs related to the Spiritist doctrine, and which are found in all cultures? And the Spirit said, this doctrine is as old as the world. That is why we find it in everything, proof that it is true. Since it preserves an intuition of its spirit state, the incarnated spirit possesses an instinctive awareness of the invisible world. This awareness, however, is frequently distorted with prejudice as well as being superstition arising from ignorance. So they're saying, again, kind of how we were mentioning before, this has been seen all throughout our existence on this world, just from the beginning of our earth that we're talking about right now. This doctrine is as old as it. People have had this thought. Maybe these thoughts look a little bit different, but they've had these basic thoughts, these basic instincts with them. And however, on this earth, sometimes they get distorted because we're still growing. We're not perfect yet. So there's still these imperfections that are getting in the way of us like fully explaining it correctly. And that was the end of chapter 4. So now we're going to move on to chapter 5. And the beginning of this is called Consideration Concerning the Plurality of Existences. So we're going to be talking about plurality of existences is more than one existence. And this isn't really a question. This next question, it's more of just paragraphs that they kind of went on and just kind of were explaining and summing it up. So we'll just go piece by piece and break it up and try and understand it. So this is question 222. Some people have stated that the doctrine of reincarnation is not new, that it was taken from Pythagoras. We have never said that the Spiritist doctrine is a modern invention. Since it stems from the very laws of nature, Spiritism per se must obviously have existed since the beginning of time, and we have always sought to show that traces of it may be found in remote antiquity. It is well known that Pythagoras was not the creator of the theory of, this is a tricky word here, let's see, metempsychosis. And then there's a footnote so we can actually understand what that means. And that means it's a theory through which the spirits who did not behave properly and nobly on earth must reincarnate as lower order animals. So let's just break up that piece first. So what they're saying is that some people think that, okay, they kind of judge and they kind of point fingers and they say, no, you didn't invent this because those people were thinking that all the way back then. And they said that we never said that the Spiritist doctrine was a modern thing. It's been around, like we were saying, since the beginning of this earth. So it's been around for a very long time. And we just kind of put it in different words, but it's the same concept that's been around. And then they're saying how some people are thinking, oh, Pythagoras was the one who invented this. Like, why are we taking his credit? But then they say it's well known that he wasn't the creator of the theory, which is metempsychosis. And so that's the theory that the spirits who don't behave properly or nobly on earth, that they'll have to be lower order or even animals. Yeah. And then it continues with that, and it says, he took it from the Hindu philosopher and Egyptians, who had believed in it from time immemorable. So even this guy who they're saying, who people are like, oh no, he invented it. But he took it from the Hindu philosophers and the Egyptians, who have had that thought since who knows when, for a long time. So even the ones that they're saying, oh no, he said that, it wasn't even him. He took that idea from other people. And then it continues. The idea of transmigration of souls was therefore a common belief, accepted by the most eminent individuals. By what road did this idea come to them? Was it by revelation or intuition? We do not know. So they're saying, so how did the people in the beginning, how do they have this idea? Did someone tell them, just like Moses with the commandments, or Jesus who came to help us understand these things? So how did this happen? Was it a revelation, or did they just have this intuition, this feeling about it? And they said, the Spirit said, we don't know, because if it's not that important, is what they're really trying to say. It's not that important, so it doesn't really matter for us to know that detail. And then they continue. Whatever the case may be, an idea cannot have traversed the ages and have been accepted by the most advanced minds if there was not something to it. So they're saying that whatever we are thinking, whatever your case may be, we can't ignore that so many people have agreed with this throughout the whole history of this earth. The ancientness of this doctrine should therefore be, if anything, a proof in its favor rather than an objection against it. However, it is equally known that between the metempsychosis of the ancient and the modern doctrine of reincarnation, there is one main difference. The spirits absolutely reject the transmigration of human souls into animals, and vice versa. So here they're kind of stating again how, okay, this has been around for a very long time, and the proof that it's been around for so long means that how inaccurate can it be if all these different groups of people have had this idea? But they did say the one thing to keep in mind, a big difference that we have to understand, although we didn't create any of this, it's just kind of bringing this learning to our attention. The spirits in Spiritism, we reject the idea that humans are going to go into animals, or that animals are going to go into humans. So that's what they were saying right there at the end, that they reject the transmigration of human souls into animals. So yeah, if you don't improve in this life, you're going to come back in the same spot, but it's going to be a human. You're not going to go as an animal. So that's the one main difference. But besides that, and as we know, all religions have differences. But if we really look at what they're saying, these differences seem very small, and you can find similarities in there. And then they continued. In teaching the doctrine of the plurality of corporeal existences, the spirits have thus renewed a doctrine that was born during the earliest ages of the world, and which has preserved up to our time in the inmost thoughts of many persons. However, the spirits have presented it in a more rational point of view, more according to the progressive law of nature, and more in harmony with the wisdom of the Creator, by digesting it out of the accoutrements of superstition. So what they're saying here again is that we didn't invent this. The spiritists and the spirits, they just kind of renewed it. They kind of put it into different words, made it a better explanation, made it more relevant to our time or the time when they were doing this, and kind of made it into a more logical sense. But they just kind of renewed it. They didn't invent it. And then it continues. A point worth noting is that it is not only in this book that they have taught it recently. Even before it was published, numerous communications of the same nature have been received in many regions, and they have multiplied considerable since then. Moreover, it might be pertinent to examine why it is not that all spirits seem to be in agreement regarding this doctrine. We shall revisit that issue later. So what they're saying here is that the spirits, they didn't only renew this and put it into this one book that we're reading right now. They renewed it in different ways, and because as we know, if someone, especially back when this was written, if it was written in English, other people wouldn't get it, or if it was written in French, because everything was handwritten. You couldn't type and Google Translate a whole thing, so it was very difficult. So these spirits, they kind of introduced these ideas in many different regions. So many regions were receiving the same information and trying to put it together, kind of just like we were saying that the Hindus' beliefs with the reincarnation and the Egyptians and us here, it's all different parts that are kind of, they might not look exactly the same, but these key aspects in there could really be similar. And they're just saying that that soon we're going to examine why, if we all kind of have the same beliefs in some sort of way, even if it might not seem exactly the same, it's similar. Why can't we all seem to agree then? And this explanation that they have, this question 222, it goes on for a while, and I think this is the best part for us to leave off, even though it's a few minutes short today. And so next week we'll continue back and we'll go through the rest of this section and continue just their explanation. It's not really a specific question. But before we leave off today, I'd like to read our daily book of positive quotations for today's date, April 4th. So this one's titled, Being in Harmony. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are all in harmony. Living in a way that reflects our beliefs should be easy, but we slip all the time. We believe in honesty, but fib to avoid getting in trouble. We believe in kindness, but duck around the corner to avoid someone we don't have time to talk to. Doing what we can to walk the talk doesn't just make us better people, it makes us happier people as well. We don't have to think hard about how we're going to react to something or what the right action is when we follow our own beliefs. I have strong beliefs, and I will live my beliefs as best as I can. This means making sure that that what I think, what I say, and what I do are the same thing. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to talk about, feel free to email me at cardiacradioforteens@gmail.com. I'm Bia, and this is Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.